Hello, my name is Cassandra Struble, and I'm the owner of Complete Life Balance Yoga. And I am here today to discuss with you yoga props. Today's focus for props will be our yoga blocks. A lot of people take them as, oh, you're weak, you're going to use blocks, or I don't need them, they're blocks. However, today I'm going to show you a little bit of magic in these things. They are one of the best investments when you start a yoga practice or a meditation practice. They're kind of universal and can be used in many ways. So today we're going to discuss a few ways we can use them and point out a little bit of their magic. So before I begin, I always like to go over basic blocks and talk about them. So usually you want to have two. It makes it a little bit easier. You can use them for balancing, and you have one for each hand. Also, we can put our blocks together and we can make one gigantic block any way that you like. We can also remember that every block has three heights. So we have our highest height, we have a medium height, and we have a low height. So we can always adjust our blocks to whichever posture we are doing to kind of change a little bit about its use. So to start out, I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can use them generally. So if you're just starting out into yoga and you're like, oh, I need to buy a prop, what should I get? I got a mat. I always say blocks, because here's the thing. Not only does it allow you to focus a little bit more in each posture with your breath, but it also gives you a little bit of a place to kind of use in different ways to make us feel different things in our yoga practice. So first things first, I always like to mention, because this is a big thing, is starting at the top of our mats with our yoga blocks. And why I love blocks and I started using them is I really have a hard time lunging back. Sometimes I lose my balance. Sometimes I become awkward in my hips because I've had some back surgery. So I use them to kind of balance me out, as well as bringing the floor up to meet me. So thinking about that, we can always come up to the top of our mats. And then as we inhale up and we exhale, we forward fold, we can always land on our blocks. Now, as we come into our forward fold is about lengthening through that spine. So we can kind of use the blocks as different heights to kind of bring a little bit of different practice. I always tell people kind of play with it, see what's comfortable, figure out where you're at as you come into any posture with your blocks. It's always nice to try around with the heights. So finding a height that's right in our forward fold is always great. We never want to leave our hands just kind of hanging around there. That puts pressure on our shoulders. So we either want to rest them on the floor, we want to rest them on our legs, our shins, or we can rest them on our blocks. So I always recommend when we take our step back into our lunge, this is a good time to adjust our lunge. Now we have a way that we can kind of find a place. We can kind of figure out our low lunge. Maybe want to come up with a medium lunge. However we can even take that time to look back at our feet just because of bringing the ground up to meet us. So it gives us time here to even play with our posture. And I always tell people everybody's got a secret of teaching. Mine is I have Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. So blocks really help me keep a nice structure with my practice. However, they are a nice little gift to actually do postures with. So we can place our hands on our blocks and we can shift and look up into our monkey. That's going to totally change what we feel in the back of our legs. And instead of pushing on our shins and really pushing back, the blocks allow for us to give a little bit more room in our body to lift with. So that's always one good way to use blocks. They can bring the floor up to us. They can also give us some different experiences, like I said. Our next thing that I always like to talk about is using them as goals or as targets. So when we're thinking about our yoga push-up, or we're thinking about when we're in our plank, really thinking about where our shoulders are, because a lot of times our biggest complaint as teachers is my shoulders hurt. So then we kind of have to look and evaluate where somebody's body weight is, because we want to keep them out of our shoulders. So what's really nice about the blocks is we can kind of create more of a focus on our core just by using them as a target. So one of my greatest things that I taught my students is, when we come into our plank, it really involves all of our body. It involves our calves, our thighs, our legs, our bums, our core, every part of it, as well as our hands and our ability to hold ourselves there and breathe at the same time. So sometimes when we're starting off with our yoga push-ups, I don't like to have my students dipping down really far into their shoulders because nobody just needs that extra pressure. So we like to work on building our core to start. So my biggest thing is I always tell students, let's start out first in our child's pose because we can measure our body's natural length. And we're going to stay with our proper child's pose. So some people in child's pose, maybe they'll open their knees to come back into the child's pose. For ours, we're going to keep our knees underneath us because we're going to work on that plank. So then we're going to figure out how high we want to bring our bellies. So we want to make this our goal, or this our goal, or that. For the purposes of you being able to see them, I am going to do them at my highest level. And that is where I want to have my belly touch as I'm working on my plank and my yoga push-up. So as I'm coming up, I'm going to measure my hands out. So I'm going to drop that bottom back towards my heels in my child's pose. And I'm going to reach and extend those fingers nice and wide. I'm going to take my fingers as wide as I possibly can. Now, as I inhale and pull up, I'm going to start to squeeze my thighs. I'm going to start to squeeze my glutes. Now over in the front here, my shoulders are right over those wrists. So as we pull back, we're going to keep just that tricep working. Now, once we hit those blocks, or maybe where our triceps can still push us out with having to dig into the shoulders, we can create that as a goal. So again, here we are using those blocks to kind of create that goal as to where we want to go. And then you know what? I got rather good at that one. Let's go down to the next height. So we're switching that down. We're just going to check and make sure that we're at our body's natural length. Sometimes I like to come up and really check out where they are and adjust them. Sometimes we might flow through our yoga push-up here. So really thinking about squeezing, using our belly, tightening it up towards that spine, and giving ourselves a goal of how far our triceps can work for us. Again, keeping this out of our shoulder because it's very common for people once they get to here to kind of let that body flop down. And now we're in our shoulders. So what our blocks do here is they just allow for us to create that goal that we can actually be strengthening in that posture. So using our blocks kind of as a goal setter or as something to, again, just keep our body more strong and keep our body in place. So that is another great way to use blocks that, again, anybody could use. And then, so lastly, I'm going to talk about support, because this is one of my favorite postures as somebody who likes to focus on backs as a teacher. So you can actually take these blocks and make a nice little block pad here. And for tonight's purposes, I'm going to start off at the side and I'm going to start all the way back on my mat here. Now, as I come onto my back, I'm going to do a supported bridge. So we're going to use these blocks to kind of focus our lower back. So I'm going to walk those heels back to my body. I'm going to press up and I'm going to place those blocks underneath my back. Now, this is where I tell people we always want to adjust because we don't want the blocks like sticking in our back. We don't want it to be uncomfortable on our tailbone. We need to shift around in our shoulders so we can relax. Most importantly, lifting our head and lowering it down so that we have room to breathe. Now here in our supported bridge, this is a good feeling. We can kind of relax. We bring our hands down to our side or touch our blocks here. And we can think about crossing our shoulders, lifting our chest to the sky, just like we would in a bridge. However, we're using those blocks to really focus maybe some tension we may be holding in our lower backs. If we are trying to kind of get our back to kind of open up, maybe it's super stiff in our lower back, we can keep these blocks here and simply bring our knees into our chest. And it's going to press and support that lower back. It's going to give our knees to chest just a little bit of a different sensation. So it's going to allow for that space to move side to side a little bit differently. You know, really thinking about that breath in our movement. And then more importantly, it brings me to my favorite one, which is just our waterfall, placing our feet up. Sometimes I like to adjust my back here and just bringing our toes in the air, taking nice deep breaths here. If we do nothing else with our day, a little good digestion tip, sitting like this, placing our feet over our head, taking nice big lower belly breaths here is a fantastic way to get our digestive juices moving. So I always tell people to kind of play around in it, maybe moving our feet from side to side, maybe kind of scissor kicking from here to here, maybe even doing like a little miniature plow, kind of allowing those toes to fall back towards our head. Really not trying to get into a crazy full plow, but just allowing for the back of our legs to kind of extend out. And we can kind of also do some lower abs here just by crunching our abs up, really thinking about engaging all of that lower core. So again, we can relax, support, we can use them to work, and we can use them to take a stretch just to a different place. That is why I would say that if I were to suggest my first prop as a new student to yoga, I would say that blocks are beneficial. I would say if you practice yoga regularly and you have not tried getting some blocks, you are missing out. So I thank you guys for coming. And as always, go get your yoga blocks.